after 10 is the time. In a moment, how care home staff are increasingly calling upon relatives to stop filming us. Also in the course of the programme this morning, I'll give you the story behind this headline, and if you can resist this, then you have a steelier resolve than I do. Dwarf dressed as a Dalek tasered after knife threat. The full details on that tale to come. And I'll also be revealing to you the identity and indeed the antics of the man who's just set a world record for eating stinging nettles. Oh yes, it's all happening today. And you can see it in glorious Technicolor, because for reasons that I hope will become clear in the course of the next few minutes, this programme is coming to you not just via audio but also via video. In other words, if you go to lbc.co.uk, you can indulge in the frankly strange pleasure of watching me talk to you, as opposed to simply listening. Why? I'll tell you why. Well, you know why already. I've just told you about relatives calling, or facing calls for them to be banned from secretly filming care home residents if they suspect abuse. This from the senior nurses. It was back in February the Care Quality Commission introduced a policy that allows worried families to covertly film as a last resort, but the Royal College of Nursing yesterday called for the policy to be banned on the perfectly plausible grounds that it would deter nurses from working in care homes. And if you deter good nurses from working in care homes, you inevitably drive down standards. I know what you're thinking, that old canard, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear, and maybe it's true. But I actually wonder if it is. Let me sort of get a very personal take on this one today. My mum's in a care home at the moment. Mum's in her 70s. She's just had a new hip. The treatment she's received from the NHS has been absolutely superb, exemplary. And as far as I'm aware, it was not in any way affected or diluted or damaged by the fact that we also give medicine to people born elsewhere who suffer from HIV. Of course, that won't stop some people from trying to tie the two stories together, but you can get a new hip on the NHS, and God knows how much that would cost, actually. But it's a real pleasure and a privilege to see the NHS in action. But because the rehabilitation period is quite lengthy, obviously you've got a brand new hip in your leg, and because if you live on your own, you can't really do a lot of the stuff that you need to do during that period of rehabilitation. She's moved into a care home near her home and is being looked after. There's only 4 or 5 people in there. She's got her own room, all on the NHS, all magnificent. And my mum, you probably won't be surprised to hear if you're kind enough to listen to me on a vaguely regular basis. My mum is not what you would call a wallflower. She's made of pretty robust stuff. And even after the trauma of a seriously invasive medical operation, my mum is never one who would bite her tongue when talking to me, especially if anything was making her unhappy, if anything was making her cross, if anything was making her even frightened, she would not be shy to say so. Okay, so I can't really conceive of circumstances in which I'd need a camera. As long as my mum was still in possession of all her faculties, I can't really conceive of circumstances in which I'd need a camera to explore my suspicions. If I had any suspicions, she'd tell me. So at first glance, you sort of have this notion of your loved one, your mum, your dad, your granddad, whoever it would be, and you think of them as they were before you lost them, or as they are now, in terms of dementia or Alzheimer's. You think of them as not actually being in a position to do what I know my mum would do, and just tell me if something was wrong. You know when you have lost touch with reality that it's very hard to know what to do. There was that awful story yesterday of the man who can't kiss his own wife in a care home. She's got Alzheimer's. The counsellors had to intervene to prevent him from trying to kiss her for the very simple reason that she doesn't recognise him and just thinks some strange bloke is coming towards her, trying to get romantic. And you can see how that is a horrible situation for all concerned. So that woman there, if she was your mum or your grandma or your wife and you thought she was coming to harm or not being looked after properly in the care home, you might think about putting a secret camera in there. I mean, what would you be looking for? You'd be sort of unexplained bruises on your mum's back or something, or bed sores that made you suspect the linen wasn't being changed regularly enough, or maybe loss of weight that made you wonder whether anybody actually checked to see if she was eating her snap at lunchtime and dinner time. I mean, the list is pretty endless, isn't it? It's not an unreasonable suspicion. It's not paranoia to want this. It seems perfectly plausible. But then you have to put yourself in the shoes of the other person involved in this story. I think you do. No, I really do think you do. And you have to find yourself, A, wondering how you'd feel about being presumed guilty until you could prove yourself innocent. Why do you need a camera in my room? Why do you need a camera when I'm at work? Well, because we think you're dodgy and we need to prove that you're not. Okay. Again, nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Maybe plays a role in this conversation. But I don't think I'd like it, which is why the camera is on now in this studio. And obviously, I know it's on, so it's not secret. But even though I know it's on, there's a couple of things that I routinely do of a morning that I'm really keen not to do now. I'm really conscious of not doing now. Just sort of the kind of banter that we have visual banter with my colleagues over there, lbc.co.uk, if you want to get on the live studio cam. Well, not on it. I'm on it if you want to watch it. So my colleagues over there, you will see me, I imagine, in the course of the next hour, cut my fingers across my throat like that, which usually means I'm ready to move on to the next caller now. But I guess in a different context, that could look a little brutal. If somebody is on the programme who, let's say, isn't winning many friends or influencing people, I might occasionally see, already I'm putting the hand, getting the hand down. Or I might do a gesture to convey to my colleagues that I think the person on the line is something of a prune, for want of a better word. I won't be using that gesture, I hope, in the course of the next hour, because it would get me into trouble. And then there are things I sometimes do, and I'm not going to lie to you, I never lie to you. There are things that I sometimes do in the studio that I'm not going to tell you about, because you wouldn't understand, and you'd think I was callous, or stupid, or vicious, even though I know, and I hope you know, that I'm not. But there are things you do in the context of a private relationship, especially at work, the kind of things you say to a colleague when you're sort of trying to gee each other up or even wind each other up, that you would be mortified to see broadcast to a wider audience. I mean, absolutely mortified. The stuff you say to your mate that you don't want your boss to hear, for example. So there are things that I sometimes do in the studio as well, sometimes say. You won't be able to hear me, I don't think, during the adverts, but you'll still be able to see me. And I just don't feel entirely comfortable about that. If it became a permanent arrangement, I'd get used to it. But if you now had the power, and you don't, do you? If you now had the power to opt in and out of watching me without me knowing, if you know, there was some software available or some technology available that allowed you to dip into this studio and just watch me without me knowing you were watching me, to secretly observe me at work, and you caught me doing a hand gesture, or you caught me communicating with my colleagues in a way that wouldn't really translate to a broader audience, that would freak the devil out of me. What do you mean? They can flick a switch, and then you say, well, what have you got to hide? What are you worried about? You can flick a switch at any moment and just see me sitting in the studio blathering. At any moment at all. You can see the sort of fancy green tea that I'm drinking with the flower sprouting out there. Well, you can see absolutely everything. And I don't know whether you're watching or not. I've got no way of... You're doing it without even telling me. Then I've got sympathy for these nurses. We're living in a country now where believing the best of people is actively and violently discouraged. We are encouraged at every turn to believe the worst of people. Believe the worst of people who are often charged with looking after us. So the attacks upon the NHS, vicious, violent and frequent now. Teachers, we're supposed to believe the worst of teachers. The government that's slashed legal aid now has a justice secretary in the name of Michael Gove who's slagging off the legal system and saying poor people can't get justice. You slash legal aid. Of course they can't. Everywhere you turn, believe the worst of people. You won't get justice. You won't get looked after. Your children won't get educated. Believe that the country where someone was born is indicative of their personality or their common decency. Oh, don't want to live next door to them. Believe the worst of them. Oh, there's a Muslim over there. I don't like a Romanian over there. Don't look. Everywhere you go, we're being encouraged to believe the worst of people. Maybe that's reality. I don't want it to be reality, and I don't think it's your reality. Let's find out. 14 after 10. Phone lines are open, but I haven't given you the number yet, so if you ring in now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Should relatives, it's a simple enough question, yes or no, but obviously the story that you bring to your answer will be more powerful than anything I can do with this sort of little bit of theatre by turning on the cameras in the studio. Should you and me and anybody else be allowed to secretly film our relatives in care homes? Yes or no? 0345 6060 973. And as ever on the programme, it's the why of your answer that interests me more than the what. So once we've got the yes or the no in place, the why is where I think enlightenment will really lie. Should you, should I, should he, should she, should they be allowed to stick a secret camera in their own family member's room in a care home? Because, well, either because they're suspicious that something wrong is going on, or simply because they want to be 100% sure that something isn't. And I don't know if we'll need to, but at 10:15, it occurs to me that you may want to expand this out of care homes. I've heard tales of childcare, nannies, as it were, being secretly filmed. They stick a camera in a teddy bear in the corner of the nursery or something like that. And I don't know, it offends my sensibilities because of that notion of believing the worst of people until they prove otherwise. But of course, if my mum was getting gypped in the care home she's currently in, or I feared my children were getting hurt by the people we were paying to look after them, maybe I'd change my view pretty immediately. And that's why the stories here will be as interesting, if not more interesting, than the opinions. That's it from me. Words and vision. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to join in. lbc.co.uk is the place you can go to see whether I disgrace myself during the looming advertising break, and at Mr. James OB is the Twitter address you need to contact me directly. After the travel news, I will reveal to you the story behind that most remarkable headline of the day. Dwarf dressed as a Dalek tasered after knife threat. All that and more after this.
I'm Chris Golds in the LBC Travel Centre. A couple of problems now on the M25, both on the Surrey stretch. First of all, clockwise, the original problem with one lane closed at junction 6 for Godstone. It's causing delays back to junction 5 for Sevenoaks, queues of around 6 miles on the approach. And then anti-clockwise on the M25, that's queuing after an accident earlier, just before junction 10 for the Wisley interchange. Delays back to junction 12 for the M3, but all lanes are now open. It's after a car hit the central barrier. This just coming in for Shoreditch, the A10 Kingsland Road. There's been an accident involving a motorbike northbound at Shoreditch High Street and Waterson Street. Police are on the scene at the moment. It's just next to a parking bay there, but you do seem to be able to get past at the moment. The A12 southbound, that's very heavy at the moment between junction 12 for Mount Nessing and the M25. Keeping London moving in next travel updates in half an hour.
This is LBC.
Right now at Elephant and Castle, Transport for London is creating new segregated cycle lanes and replacing pedestrian subways at the Northern Roundabout.
These improvements are all part of the road modernisation plan to help make our roads safer, more reliable and more welcoming.
Whilst these improvements are being made, there will be some disruption, so avoid travelling through the area during peak times if possible.
Please plan ahead and allow more time for your journey.
Thank you.
To know your travel options and see maps of the affected areas, search TfL Elephant and Castle. Transport for London. Every journey matters.
Oh, I'm glad we took climbing lessons.
Yep, those techniques we learned made all the difference.
Still not easy, though.
You're right. But think of the sense of achievement in getting to the top.
I'm Sir Eric Peacock, and as someone who has run many successful businesses, I know the climb to the top will not be achieved without learning the right techniques and strategies. It's the same with your money. You need to learn the smarter, safer ways of achieving personal financial freedom, and there's no better place to go than Online Trading Academy. They can teach you a professional strategy to generate short-term income and long-term wealth.
To register at Online Trading Academy for your free introductory class, call 0207 11 Trade. And if you call today, we will offer you a free home study course. That's 0207 11 Trade, or head online to tradingacademy.com/trade.
All right, guys, come down off the wall now. Gym's closing.
Radio might be the theatre of the mind, but let's face it, you can't beat a good bit of telly, especially if it's a free telly. Well, join Sky Online today and you'll get exactly that, a free 32-inch LG TV. Enjoy action-packed shows like Strike Back Legacy on Sky One, plus the new series of True Detective on Sky Atlantic. Get all this and more from just £20 a month. But hurry, this offer ends 25th of June. Search Sky Bundles. Sky. Believe in better.
Sky TV from £20 a month, direct debit, subject to status, £10 standard setup, upfront payment required, UK ROI only, minimum contract and further terms apply.
Why not call in to one of the local Renault retail sites across London, or go online and visit us at renaultretail.co.uk.
Listen to your favourite LBC shows anytime and anywhere. From just £2 a month, you can listen again to any show from the last 3 years. Download the LBC podcast app for iPhone and Android now. Enjoy your favourite shows on the move with LBC Podcasts.
It's 20 minutes after 10. You are listening to and possibly watching James O'Brien on LBC. The conversation under discussion involves cameras being filmed at work. It's interesting. Listen to these two contributions. Eileen Chubb is of a charity called Compassion in Care, and she says, I'm pro-cameras because every day we get calls from staff and relatives who are witnessing abuse in care homes and nothing is done about it. And then on the other side of the debate, as it were, one of the members at the Royal College of Nursing conference in Bournemouth yesterday, where they voted overwhelmingly in favour of banning filming, OK? The nurses don't want it. And asked why they were worried, Dr. Peter Carter, Chief Executive of the union, said, I can understand why. You're doing a job, feeling like you are constantly under the microscope. It's not a panacea to cure all problems of abuse. If you have a care assistant who is unkind, uncaring, and has entirely the wrong attitude, I don't think a camera is going to stop them. It may stop the overt stuff, but it won't stop the attitudinal stuff or the cutting of corners. I've got some phone lines free here. Simple question. Nurses have voted against it. Should we respect their wishes and ban secret filming in care homes? 0345 6060 973. Paul's in Northampton. Paul, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning. My father's in a care home, and
sorry
I
to
just
hear.
wanted to thank you. I just wanted to say that cameras can be used in a variety of ways within a care home. Obviously, you're talking about the aspect of CCTV being used to record an event and capture that. My father's in a care home with a long corridor, which is a risk for people falling over, and I'm trying to get the situation with the care home where they would install CCTV that could be used purely as a monitoring aid, so that other members of staff who may be in a different area of the building can keep an eye on.
But that's
the
not
corridor.
that's not what we're talking about. You wouldn't be able to access this feed. That would just
No,
be.
that's
But that's like
correct.
security. So that's a
but
bit
it-
like
but it-
having one at the just keeping an eye on the fire escape to make sure no one's trying to get out through it or
That's
something
right,
like
but
that.
there seems to be a phobia against CCTV in general, and I think there should be sort of a definition made about the fact that CCTV and cameras in care homes can have a good place, can be very useful for being able to monitor patients from a fall or whatever without the information being recorded.
Has your dad had any problems?
He has had a fall in that particular corridor, and
how long was he unattended? How long did he stay there before anybody
Well,
came?
the problem is the way the care home operates, the sort of social areas of the care home are in a different part of the building from the corridor. The corridor contains the bedrooms, and therefore, when it's meal times and things like that, the staff will always congregate in the social area, and any members of the service users that haven't been taken to the dining area or whatever could be wandering that corridor unattended for 10, 15 minutes without being seen.
Yes, I mean, I'm grateful for the call, mate. Of course I am, but it isn't really what we're talking about, is it? This is about you secretly filming the staff, not using a camera to unsecretly keep an eye on the patients.
Yeah, I just think that generally there's a bit of a phobia against cameras being in care homes, and I'm not always sure that...
Well, except that the Care Quality Commission introduced a policy allowing worried families explicitly to covertly film their relatives in a home as a last resort. There's a reluctance in the home that you describe, but it's a reluctance to do something that shouldn't even be controversial. It's the controversial air of secrecy that intrigues me the most. And just in case you're just joining us, my mum's in a care home for a few days at the moment, and... goodness me, she's in possession of all her faculties and is not backwards in coming forwards. If she was suffering any problems at all, she'd just tell me and we deal with it. But if someone has Alzheimer's or dementia or is several miles further down the road of life and you can't be sure that they can tell you what's going on, why wouldn't you stick a camera in the room? Answer, because the nurses hate it. And I kind of find myself siding with the nurses. I know it's just a bit gimmicky for us to have stuck the cameras on in the studio, but it's not completely purposeless, because I am very conscious of it. Producer said I was a bit subdued in the first 15 minutes. It was as if when they say, dance like no one's watching. It's one of the rules of life. Always dance like nobody's watching. It's possibly a little bit conceited to suggest that I try to dance like nobody's watching when I'm in the radio studio of a morning, and today I can't. I can't dance like nobody's watching. Interesting. Luke's in Orpington. Luke, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello.
Just a quick one, really. I understand that obviously what you say, that nurses may not they might not like being filmed and things like that. touching on what you said about, obviously, you've got the cameras on you at the moment. At the moment, you haven't got anyone, you're not in charge of anyone's well-being. I used to be in the police.
Arguably. I mean, obviously, I'm not immediately in charge of anybody's well-being, but if
That's what I mean, sorry, yeah.
I mean, if you were being boring, and let's not suggesting for a minute that you are, then I might, at some point in the past, if the cameras weren't on, have yawned very visibly to my colleagues without you knowing that I was doing it. And if you did know, you'd be quite hurt.
Right, yeah, I can see that point. But obviously, I mean, I used to be in the police, and people used to film me all the time. And yeah, I didn't particularly like it, but I wasn't doing anything wrong.
Who used to film you when you were in the police?
Just public. If you're doing something, people used to do all the time.
I'd have hated that. I'd have hated that because it's saying we're keeping an eye on you, pal, because we don't trust you. They might as well just say we don't trust you. You're here to help us, but we don't trust you. That's insulting, isn't it?
I sort of see that, but people do things wrong. It doesn't bother me. I mean, I'm now a cab driver, and I've got cameras in my car, not only to protect myself, but to protect my...
but they're not secret, are they?
No, that's true.
And they haven't been put there by passengers without telling you that they're there. I mean, that's the point. Imagine if someone was putting cameras in your cab and you didn't know about them. Again, I think we've got to get the parallels bang on.
It doesn't bother me.
Well, you
if
say
I'm not
that.
doing anything wrong, it doesn't bother me.
Really?
Because if I was to have
Picking your nose? Pulling your pants out of your bum?
No,
I mean it. You might be. How do you know you won't be doing that?
Well, then I shouldn't be doing the job.
What, because you pick your nose? It's your dignity. That's what it is. That's what's troubling me. It is. I mean, you're driving a cab, mate. You want to pick your nose, you pick away. But it's an affront to your dignity to have this broad... Oh, we can have a look at it. Oh, look, he's forgotten the cameras are on. There you go. He's picking his nose. Oh, look. I don't know. I'm not articulating it quite perfectly.
In a care home,
yeah,
you hear. Okay, it doesn't happen all the time, but you hear things fairly often that things do happen, and it's discussing what can happen in care homes. I mean,
okay. What about all the cameras as you drive around Orpington? What about all the cameras on all the streets outside the pubs and the clubs? Is Orpington now completely free of violence and drunkenness on Friday and Saturday nights because all the cameras are there?
No, not at all.
So what's the point of the cameras?
Things like, because it does catch criminals, and I've got experience of that. That CCTV has been used to catch people that are doing things.
So the rationale for the cameras in the care homes is that the people looking after your mum should be treated like criminals until they prove that they're not.
No, not at all.
Well, yeah, kind of.
No, if they're not doing anything wrong, then they've got nothing to worry about.
You've got nothing to hide. You've got nothing to fear.
Exactly.
Yeah, until they change the rules of what's right and wrong, mate, and then we're all doomed. That sounded a little cynical. It's 10:28 nearly. Diane's in Isleworth. Diane, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hi, Diane.
I've worked in retail for 50 years, and I can remember... Yeah, well done, that's right. I can remember when
Your poor feet, Diane. Your poor feet.
No, actually, my feet are fine. So
50 years in, when I was in retail, it was my legs and my feet. I'd get home at the end of the day and I'd have to put... I was only in my 20s and I had to put them in saltwater baths.
No, I'm just recovering from cancer.
Oh, my
and
God.
I walk... No, I'm fine.
Good.
I walk from the Royal Marsden to Marylebone with my sister back. We do a lot of walking. But anyway, look,
Fantastic.
this is going away from what...
I'm very sorry. You're quite right. I'm digressing.
When they first brought cameras out into shops, we all felt exactly the same. And then all of a sudden you get used to it. I mean, now they're everywhere. I don't think...
Well, they weren't to watch you. They weren't to watch you when they brought them into shops. They were to catch shoplifters.
Yeah, but they watched staff as well.
Yeah, but they weren't brought in to watch you, and you knew they were there.
No. Yeah, we knew they were there, but why can't the government make it so that care homes all have cameras? I don't mean to be
Because I don't want the cameras on when someone's... Forgive me, Diane. You're a woman of the world. I'm not going to mince my words.
Yes.
When someone's having their bottom wiped.
No, I know that, but then that would be... There would have to be ways of working it.
But there aren't ways of working it. Because if I was the person in the care home and I knew the cameras were there, and I knew they got turned off when I was on bottom wiping duty, that's when I'd do nasty things.
Well, well, we need divine intervention then.
You can't say that. You can't say that. You ruin every conversation I ever have on the radio if you start talking about divine intervention. What's the point of inviting calls if we're going to leave it all to the Almighty to fix everything?
No, I don't mean that. What I mean is it's a massive, massive problem.
Yes.
Because if it was my mum and I thought something was wrong, I would want the camera.
You would. Well, you'd certainly want to know for sure whether something was wrong, but if it was your job and they were doing it secretly, the shop parallel notwithstanding, I just don't think you would. I'll tell you what is worrying. According to one of the campaigners quoted in this story, she's had 2 calls today alone from relatives who've raised concerns about staff, fears that their loved ones aren't being looked after properly, and received eviction notices as a result. It's quoted in the newspaper, but there's no detail, so it remains anecdotal. If you've got evidence of that sort of thing going on, I'd love to hear it. A couple of phone lines free now. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. The camera's going off again at 11 o'clock, when I can revert to all my appalling habits, including nose-picking and profane hand gestures. But until then, I'm on my best behaviour, and I'm not going to lie to you. I don't like it. Lisa Aziz is here with the headlines.
3 men have been arrested on suspicion of murder after 3 people died in a flat fire in Derbyshire at the weekend. The youngest victim was a 6-month-old baby. Police say the cause of the fire still hasn't been confirmed, and the arrests do not mark the end of the investigation. New guidelines are being issued to GPs aimed at improving early diagnosis rates of cancer. Health watchdog NICE is advising them to refer patients for tests straight away if they suspect they might have the disease. At the moment, they often see a specialist first. European shares have climbed to a 3-week high following suggestions Greece is close now to striking a deal so that it won't default on its debts. But the head of the International Monetary Fund says the latest economic reforms offered by the country need to be much more specific. Eurozone leaders met last night. Plans for the UK's first fracking site could be approved by councillors in Lancashire later. Quadrilla wants to drill for gas at a site between Preston and Blackpool, but the council has to agree to it first. A major demonstration against the plans been organised outside council offices. At 10:15, the FTSE 100 was up 10 at 68.35, and LBC weather dry but cloudy for London and the South East today. Highs of 20 degrees. A fine dry day for much of England and Wales, although greyer skies over Yorkshire. Warm, bright and sunny for Scotland and Northern Ireland. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
This is LBC.
We've been thinking about how to manage money and everything at home will be so different without him. How will I manage to remember all the things the specialist told us about 6-ish when he gets really tired? Is that what happens? Normally I go away with the girls, but I've cancelled even though he said I shouldn't. We'd be talking to someone.
When someone close to you has a terminal illness, the questions can be overwhelming. For information and support, call Marie Curie free on 0800 090 2309 9am to 5pm Monday to Friday.
The smarter way to manage business expenses. Presented by Concur.
I checked out of my hotel and the bill was automatically added to my expense claim. Then I hopped into a taxi, I took a picture of the receipt using Concur, and there it was, on my expense claim. Then I used my corporate card to buy the client's lunch. Another charge added to my expense claim.
Expenses that write themselves. Just one of the many ways Concur helps manage your company's spend, so you can focus on the big picture. Take a free test drive at tryconcur.co.uk.
I am the power to collaborate. I am the instant, the easy, the intuitive. And now, I am always with you, wherever you need to be. I am the new Join Me app, the online meeting app built for today's fast-paced mobile workplace. Best of all, I am free, so there's no better time for you to try. I am Join Me. Try my app for free at join.me/download.
Follow Galliard Homes to Harbour Central with apartments from just £350,000. We have been building landmark schemes in Docklands since 1993 and believe this to be our finest opportunity to date. Harbour Central is the only new landmark scheme for sale, just 5 minutes walk from the major employers at Canary Wharf. The Tube is in the heart of Mayfair in 15 minutes, and from 2018, Crossrail to Heathrow is just 39 minutes. The scheme's centrepiece is a 41-storey all-private tower with a grand Art Deco lobby and interiors by world-famous Argent Design. Come to our sales launch at Harbour Central with prices from £350,000 on June 25th through 28th at Marsh Wall, London E14. Call 0203 770 6300 or visit harbourcentral.com. That's harbourcentral.com.
If you feel so self-conscious about your teeth that it stops you smiling in public or eating causes you pain, it could all be different in just a day.
Oh, it was just amazing. My confidence came back. I felt like I wanted to go out and socialise again. I could eat normally, could talk normally, and I didn't keep putting my hand up like this.
I'm Dr. Michael Zivitz, dental specialist at TDC Implant Centre. Our award-winning treatment could give you a full set of beautiful fixed teeth restored in just one day. A quicker, less painful alternative to traditional implants.
It was done in a day.
So see smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Harley Street on 0203 7334 986.
James O'Brien on LBC.
25 minutes to 11. Staff don't want them. Some family members do. It's quite simple. Who should prevail? Relatives should be banned from secretly filming care home residents if they suspect abuse. That's what the Royal College of Nursing voted for yesterday. Before that, as promised, the story behind the headline. In the mornings, I mean, you can see, actually, if you're watching, because we've got the cameras on as part of this conversation about people being filmed at work. This is my show here, right? This is all I have. This is what I come on air with. Stuff cut out of various newspapers. And then we've decided on our favourite 3 stories, but there's a bunch of other things that I think you might be interested in hearing about, and as and when I remember, I just sort of pull them out of the pile. So I told you about 20 minutes ago that this was my favourite headline of the day. Dwarf dressed as a Dalek, tasered after knife threat. And I promised I'd give you a little more detail on that tale, so here it is. Ian Salter Bromley, 55, stuck a sucker dart on his forehead, filled his mouth with dominoes and shouted, "Exterminate, exterminate," at staff in his sheltered housing complex. It was when he started sort of telling members of staff that he was going to kill them while pretending to be a Dalek that police were called. They eventually had to taser him with 2 stun guns because they feared for his welfare. He was described by one officer as angry with veins sticking out of his neck. It wasn't filmed. But this is being, and possibly you would want your mum, or your dad, or your granddad, or your wife, or your husband to be filmed if they were in a care home. Is that fair on the staff? Massive majority of whom, we have to presume, because if we don't, we'll go mad, will be decent people, treated like criminals. Ben's in Shepton Mallet in Somerset. Ben, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, just for the record, I'm actually in Wells, in Somerset.
OK, I know Wells, lovely part of the world. Thanks for ringing in.
Certainly. Yeah, I've been working in care home work I've been a care assistant for 20 years now.
Wow.
I used to work in London, now I'm working in Somerset in a dementia unit.
Wow.
It's quite hard going.
I'm not, yeah. Do you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Why do we treat some Herbert on the reality television show like the pinnacle of human achievement in this country at the moment, and you are quietly looking after dementia sufferers for 20 years and you never even get a thank you or a pat on the back from society in general? It's nuts, Ben. Absolutely nuts.
Bless you. Thank you. No, it's really nice to say. No, but I just when I phoned up, just talking to your producer or I spoke to, I've said no one's I care for the residents. Obviously, my second family. And no one's asking the question. What about the service users? Would you want your mother being filmed having a bed wash, having a bath?
Well, the trade-off would be that is the price I will pay to be certain that well, Ben, I'm going to put it to you straight, my friend, to be certain that you are not hurting my mum.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing that you're saying. We're all being treated. I said that I'm doing. I mean, in dementia, we get kicked, punched, bitten, scratched. As you're probably aware of, with the dementia.
Not really, mate. To be honest, no. I mean, when you say it, it doesn't shock me, but I can't claim to be familiar with it. In fact, maybe footage of that sort of thing would do your profession more good than some of the stuff we're talking about.
The thing, the thing. A lot of times is about residents being abused, but a lot of staff are getting abused. I mean, a couple of times maybe twice in a month, especially a lot of ladies working care work.
Yes.
Was punched in the face, almost punched in the chin. Her friends, shocked and having.
I hadn't thought of that. Do you know, I hadn't thought of it that way around. And in fact, the chairman, the chief exec of the RCN says here that the cameras may imply that a resident is being abused when actually they're crying out because they have dementia or they're having their dressings changed on wounds and they're in genuine but unavoidable pain. He said people think abuse is physically or verbally abusing, but neglect is equally abusive. And no camera's ever going to pick up neglect effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have residents who will constantly, I mean, whether you're with them or not, they'll be calling out, help, can you help me? Because they don't, you're with them in the room, you're talking with them, but they'll just forget you're there for a second, look away, and again they're calling help. And all the time, I won't say anyone's names, obviously.
No, of
but
course.
There's one particular lady who look after, you talk to her, she's fine. As soon as you walk away, talk to another resident, she's straight away calling help, and it's heartbreaking. But again, you have to let her go, be calling out all the time, so you can spend time with the other residents.
And if you were watching, a clip of that moment, you might think that the person in the room was doing something harmful, doing something wrong. And then, of course, when that person, you, tries to explain to the son, me, that you weren't, I might not believe you.
Absolutely.
Because the footage can be misleading. The camera does lie.
It does. As I said to my colleagues many times, I said to you, if they could hear this camera, if they heard that on audio, they would think the terrorists were worse of us. But obviously, we can't be sitting. Unless we could actually get funding to have one carer to be with her 24 hours a day. That would be fun. Obviously, there's no way she's going to get funding for that because she's got dementia. And they got.
So you have a care worker in a room with a visibly distressed patient, and we as family members who care put two and two together and come up with 5 and presume that the distress is caused by the care worker.
Exactly, that's right, exactly. And when we are the majority of care workers are, about 99.9% of us are really giving our heart and soul.
Of course you are, and I'm so glad that you found a moment to ring in this morning and make that point from the coal face, as it were. Ben in Wells, not Shepton Mallet, categorically defending the dignity of your profession, but also of your patients. Remember that the first point Ben made was about people being filmed undergoing undignified procedures or experiences, and it's easy for me to say, well, that's the price you pay for knowing that they're not being hurt. But these are people who probably can't actually answer the question for themselves about whether they'd be comfortable being filmed receiving a bed bath or using a bedpan. Penny is in Golders Green. Penny, what would you like to say?
Hi,
Penny.
James. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Well, my story is not a happy one, and I'm all in favour for cameras. My mother was in a care home. She had Huntington's, which was a neurological disease. And she was abused, but we were quite naive. We didn't realise that she was. And,
what was happening to her, and how did you find out?
Well, it was raised by another member of staff. There was meetings. She's since the care home has closed down.
Right.
It has closed down, and my mother has passed away. She passed away 4 years ago.
I'm sorry.
I'm actually riddled with guilt because I didn't realise. I actually didn't realise that this was happening. There was a time that she had a really bad cut.
So what was happening? I know it's difficult for you, but just in terms of specific detail.
Well, there was bruises, but then we thought the bruises. Well, but really, it wasn't just a bruise. It was like.
So one staff member was deliberately hurting your mum, and it was brought to your attention by another concerned member of staff.
Well, it went straight to a committee. There was obviously there was meetings that we attended, but we were totally unaware.
Of course you were.
Totally. And she had bruises, but we thought because of her illness, because she had involuntary movement.
She could have been banging herself on anything, on a door frame or a bed frame or anything.
Exactly.
So if you could go back in time, you would stick a camera in her room, I presume.
Absolutely. But like I said, I did, obviously there was meetings, there was, I actually put it in the local Wandsworth paper, and another lady, the same thing was happening to her mother at the same home.
Right.
But it has since closed down. There were some very caring people there, and it wasn't like my sister used to go every single day, so it wasn't like we
abandoned.
She was
yes.
Exactly. So given the choice, yes, I would have put a camera.
And then, I suppose I have
on
to...
reflection.
Yes, and 2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing. And I know that my words won't really mean anything to you, Penny, but you can't beat yourself up for stuff you didn't know about. You can only really feel, or we shouldn't we, as a species, only really feel guilty about things we did have some control over. And you didn't. I mean, I don't think you did. And even if you had put a camera there, this wrong un arguably would soon have got wise, and as we've discussed with other callers, tailored their nastiness accordingly. I just wonder whether it is a bit like a sticking plaster instead of a cure. So actually under-resourced, underfunded, understaffed care homes, oh, I know what we can do. We'll put better cameras. Well, why don't you have better hiring procedures or pay better? Well, then we have to pay the wages. This is the future, by the way. This will be, if we're still having conversations together in 20 years' time, care for older people, of whom we will be older, if you're close to my age, 30 years' time, I'll be in my 70s. It's underpinning all the problems in Greece, pension provisions there, which Tsipras promised would be untouched. It is going to be almost the only story in town within our lifetime, and yet it's still really difficult to talk about. I guess it's because there's horrors on the horizon and we don't like to contemplate them. Neville will be first after the travel news. After Neville, it could, of course, be you. You can grab the phone line Penny's just vacated by dialing 0345 6060973. There's a chance that Bagpuss will be coming back. I used to love Bagpuss. I cannot believe one element of this story, though. They're thinking about bringing back a modernised Bagpuss. You know, the silly old cloth cat or whatever it was called. How many episodes of Bagpuss do you think were actually filmed? If you'd asked me this morning, I'd have said about 50, and I was pretty confident I'd seen them all at least 3 times. How many episodes about? You won't believe the answer, if you've got a lingering fondness for Bagpuss, as I do. How many episodes, actual episodes of Bagpuss, do you think there were? I'll tell you after this.
I'm Chris Golds in the LBC Travel Centre. Problems continue on the M25 on the Surrey stretch this morning. Clockwise, there's queues after an accident earlier. 2 vans involved. Just before junction 6 for Godstone, it's still causing problems back to junction 5 for Sevenoaks. Also on the Surrey stretch, this time anti-clockwise on the M25. That's very heavy after an accident earlier, just between junction 13 for Staines and 11 for Chertsey. Now in Shoreditch, the A10 Kingsland Road, there's been an accident there involving a motorbike. Just northbound at Shoreditch High Street. Police are on the scene. You're still able to get past at the moment. Just approach that with care. St Paul's Cray, the A20 Sidcup bypass. You're looking at queues around 2 miles heading into London at Cray Road and Crittles Corner. And Westminster Victoria Embankment westbound, that's very slow at the moment from Temple Place and Temple Station towards Westminster Bridge. Keep your London moving. And next travel updates in half an hour.
This is LBC.
Radio might be the theatre of the mind, but let's face it, you can't beat a good bit of telly, especially if it's a free telly. Well, join Sky Online today and you'll get exactly that, a free 32-inch LG TV. Enjoy action-packed shows like Strike Back Legacy on Sky One, plus the new series of True Detective on Sky Atlantic. Get all this and more from just £20 a month. But hurry, this offer ends 25th of June. Search Sky Bundles. Sky. Believe in better.
Sky TV from £20 a month, direct debit, subject to status, £10 standard setup, upfront payment required, UK ROI only, minimum contract and further terms apply.
From up here, you can appreciate just how many cars populate our roads. They're costing us money, yet making us nothing.
But they could. In fact, if you fund a car through buy-to-let-cars.com, they'll then lease it to a fully vetted customer, and you could receive an 8 to 11% annual return. Find out more at buy-to-let-cars.com. That's letcars.com. Conditions apply.
The camels, the cloudless blue skies, the Red Sea, the Faroes, the golden beaches. For this week only, selected holidays to Egypt are even lower with low-cost holidays. And thousands of other 3, 4 and 5-star holiday destinations are ridiculously lower this summer. Find out just how low you can go to Egypt at lowcostholidays.com. Egypt, live the magic. Why go high cost when you can all go even lower cost?
Right, we got my suitcase.
Check.
Your suitcase?
Check. Your entire camera collection?
Yep. And half a shoe shop?
Of course.
Then Devon, here we come!
Woohoo!
Restart your heart with a Renault Clio. Now available from £149 per month with 3 years 0% APR representative. 0% APR representative, Renault Finance. Excludes Clio Expression. Ordered and registered by September the 30th, 2015. Deposit 2247, £400 deposit contribution. 36 monthly payments of £149. Final payment 5664. Participating dealers only, subject to status and over 18s. T's and C's apply. See Renault.co.uk/offers.
We love questions. From what zone am I in to how far is Cockfosters? Is this the right exit for Old Street to how many stops to Camden? So don't be afraid, go on, ask us anything. Well, within reason. We may not know where the world's longest single-span suspension bridge is, but we can help you with pretty much anything else. Apparently, it's the Akashi Kaikyo in Japan. We're moving staff into ticket halls so they can help you more effectively. All our stations will continue to be staffed whilst train services are running. Just part of the future of the tube. Search TfL Future Tube.
Transport for London. Every journey matters.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10 minutes to 11. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC and possibly watching him as well, because we've kept the first hour of the programme broadcast visually via our website, lbc.co.uk. It's an astonishing studio, this, by the way. It's if you've never seen it, it's sort of all HD ready. It's better, actually, better, technologically more advanced than some of the television studios I've worked in recently. But the reason we've got the cameras on is that we've left them on during the adverts. And just for an hour, and it discombobulated me. I can't lie to you. A few of you have said, actually, Ellie, who I don't know why you mentioned your nursing qualifications, but as a nurse, she says, I'm just wondering how you really feel during the breaks, as when you are actually live, you seem more relaxed from a nursing point of view. I am more relaxed now, because we're talking to each other. Whereas when we're not talking to each other, but you're still watching me, and I'm not sure why, then it's a bit weird. So if I worked in a care home, yeah, I don't know. Sandra, my colleague, just made me a cup of tea. Obviously, if the cameras weren't on, you'd have seen me hurl it back at her because she forgot my chocolate finger. It's 10:51. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Back to seriousness. Neville's in Sevenoaks. Neville, what made you pick up the phone?
It was the key word, James, about dignity.
Yes.
Dignity for my father. This is an extremely emotional phone call for me, and every time I hear this come up on radio stations about looking after the care of older people, it's extremely. It was a whole year. I could actually write a book about it. It was unbelievably bad. One of the occasions when he actually came out of hospital into a care hospital with a stroke, I actually came into the ward with the curtains around my father, which I don't know how cameras would have even picked this up.
That's a good point.
I saw two nurses either side of the bed with my father totally naked. Now, don't forget, he had a stroke down one side. He's a very dignified man of 86, or 85, actually. And none of my family know this, because I need to get this out just to tell people.
You take your time, Neville, and remember you're among friends.
Wow. And honestly, James, I don't know how if your mother is 70 and she has to go into a care home, I would advise not to go into a care home or hospital. You must try and look after her by herself. What happened to me, and I see these pictures in my mind and ingrained in my mind all the time, he was just hanging in a hoist, totally naked, above the bed. I don't know, and there was this pot underneath his backside, and they were just looking at him, and they were talking with their arms folded. They couldn't be bothered to put him on a commode. And I came through those curtains, and I saw him there. I've got tears in my eyes now thinking about it.
Of course you have.
And I just absolutely went... My father's looked at me in the eye, with his head to one side. He just looked at me and said, well, what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on here? And he was just perched above the bed so he could do his toilet. And it was totally bad. It was ridiculous. This was only... Sorry.
I guess that wouldn't even qualify as abuse, would it? It would just qualify as a I don't know, inadequacy rather than an actual deliberate wrongdoing.
For Christ's sake, what are they doing?
I don't know, mate.
What are they doing? And I have a unbelievable catalogue of things what went on with my father when he had a stroke. You would not believe what went on, even from when he had his stroke. The doctor came in and said he had a virus. You know what my father said to him?
Oh.
Do you know what, doctor? I think I might be having a stroke. And he said, no, you have a virus, no problem. Me and my sister, this was in his flat.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about strokes or aneurysms and anything like that. Well, I was a little bit, I don't know, random. Anyway, he said, you know, just get this medicine and he'll be okay. He's only got a virus. I came back the next morning and he was having a stroke and he was in such a position on the floor which I'll never ever forget. And he was having a stroke. And all that doctor had to do, believe you me, Mr. O'Brien, I know a lot about aneurysms and strokes. And all that doctor had to do was to give him some simple exercises or some simple things to see that he was having a stroke, that he would have been straight into hospital.
And I mean, there's even television advertising campaigns teaching us all how to recognise some of these signs now. I do understand what you're saying.
I know everything about it. And that doctor came 3 months later in the hospital, and I said, what the hell are you doing here? You know what happened.
Yes.
And I had a one-to-one with him in a quiet room. Do you know that doctor broke down and cried to me and apologised? We had a professional doctor apologise to me. He was actually crying. I said, I know a lot about strokes and aneurysms now, doctor, and you did not take the care of my father. I'm not saying that he was in such a bad way that it might have been even less if you would have just taken that time out and sorted him out.
Well, I suppose it will sound glib, Neville, but at least he had a conscience. It does sound as if you managed to prick it, and if you could, I get it, and I feel your pain, but I would remind you that we're sort of talking about people at the opposite end of the pay scale now. We're talking about. Just tell me your view on cameras, because as you said yourself, the curtains might have made sure that the cameras couldn't have.
If anybody has any frequencies of like they're not being looked after properly, they've got to put a secret camera in, because I would have done that many times in 3 hospitals. I got my father out of 2 hospitals because he wasn't being looked after properly.
I don't think anyone hearing what you went through would argue with the conclusions that you arrive at, but I have to say, Neville, I do hear echoes of Ben, the caller from Wells in Somerset, who's spent 20 years looking after people with Alzheimer's and dementia, and your conversation with me, even if I'm nodding in agreement, and I am for the record, it's an insult to him and the 20-year service he's done, blemish-free, which will be true of most people, but then you've got the image of your beloved father in the definition of indignity. And I certainly am not here to tell you that you should be able to see past that, because I know for a fact that if our roles are reversed now, Neville, I wouldn't be able to. Not in a billion years. Francis is in Lewisham. Francis, what would you like to say?
Hi. So I think I've got a couple of different perspectives. So I used to, when I was at university, work for an agency, working in different nursing homes. And I also worked at a nursing home just up the road from my parents. And I can guarantee that having cameras in would have made such a big difference.
In what way, Francis?
Because, unfortunately, even if the majority of the staff were really good where I went, and most of them were excellent, there were a couple who weren't excellent.
Yes.
And I just think you just cannot take a chance with...
But why do I need a camera if their colleagues already know that? Why didn't you do more? And, all right, you were a junior, temporary member of staff, but if you knew, everyone knew. Why can't you fix it? That's what you're paid for, I could say.
I think that people... I just think there's 2 sides to it. I think, first of all, there's the side from, why don't the staff say more? And I think that's about feeling secure and safe in their job. Because actually people can get replaced relatively quickly in these jobs.
Yes, of course.
And so I don't think that there is a huge amount of security in the job anyway. And actually, sometimes the actual management themselves aren't necessarily the most... they're not necessarily
receptive
about the care.
Receptive to the kind of criticisms that you're talking about. So the camera would give you a window to the outside world, as it were, literally.
Yeah, and it's not just about being physically not so gentle, which I saw a lot.
Yes.
But also about physical, like talking to someone in an intimidating way. So talking to them very close to their face. Talking to them without looking at them, so when they couldn't necessarily see your face, so away from them, just on purpose to make it difficult, and then having to repeat it and talking louder. And you wouldn't pick that up, the volume obviously, but you would pick up the body language and talking to someone close to their face. And also there were instances where sometimes elderly people would say to relatives that something had happened, and actually it may not have happened the way it was told.
Yes.
It's just because that person has dementia or something else, or they didn't particularly like one member of staff, that they actually told a different story to the reality.
So it could end up
it
could end up being supportive of the criticised colleague, because it would prove that the allegations were not entirely true. It's interesting just to hear that relatively, I'm going to say a young voice, Frances. I hope that's reasonable.
Ish.
A young voice talking about this, as it were, from the sort of relatively entry level, and just seeing it as a no-brainer. Yeah, of course we need it. I know what I've seen, I know what I've heard, and I know that this would help. You'll allow me, though, to still not be entirely convinced. Thank you. That hour's disappeared. I don't know where it's gone, but we'll return to this subject another day. The next subject we're discussing is remarkably something we've never done before.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's news.